Break with Rachel Vigil, taking a daily look at the biggest stories in Denver sports and interacting live with you, the Coffee Break fam. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of joe, and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel Vigil.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. I cannot believe it's Tuesday. I also can't believe it's the month of December. And I also can't believe we're talking about, could the Buffs actually have a realistic goal next season of making the college football playoff? Essentially, Deion Sanders yesterday was doing a bunch of media availability for his documentary and was asked about that, and him saying that's the goal. Now, do I think that's personally a realistic goal for Deion Sanders and the CU Buffs? It feels like a little bit of a stretch at this moment right now. If they're able to bulk up their offensive line, I think a lot could happen. Shedeur Sanders will be a little bit healthier, which will be great. I think that there are tons of things that could possibly line them up. But right here in this moment right now, I'm kind of like, oh, that seems like a little bit of a stretch. Now, I will give Deion credit. If there's one thing that man has been able to do, is make every single person in that locker room believe every single week that they can go out and they can beat any team. And belief goes a long way. So I'm definitely going to be curious. It's something I'm going to be paying attention to see who's going to be coming into Boulder. We've seen a ton of decommits, but who are they going to get? And of course, as Deion always says, I'm not hard to find. But it's going to really depend on if they're able to bulk up that offensive line. And I think that's going to be the number one key. And he mentioned even offensive linemen saying, I'm not hard to find. That's where they are really looking. Now, of course, Shedeur is going to be back. They've got their wide receivers. They've got the connection with Travis Hunter. Like, tons of stuff is going to continue on from last year. But for a team that went 4-8, it feels like a little bit of a stretch to say, hey, we're going to be one of the best 12 teams in the conference. Now, one thing I will say is if they can be, one of the best teams, people may look at it and say, we want Deion Sanders. We were talking about that even if they were able to win 5 games for a bowl game this year. We talked a lot about, hey, some network might be like, yeah, I would rather have Deion and a 5-win team out here than, some other team because you're going to get the numbers when it comes to Deion and the Buffs. So do I think if they're one of the top 15 teams that you could possibly see them sneak in just because of who Deion Sanders is, the electricity he brings to any network and to any numbers and the viewership? Yeah, I definitely think that's something that's very possible. But again, we look at the Big 12 as CU will be moving there next season. And you've got some pretty decent opponents in there. Obviously, Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah are all joining the Big 12. But what about the teams that are obviously there already? Oklahoma State, Kansas State. If you didn't know, my fiance is actually from the Kansas State area, from Manhattan. He's like by a little town just close to it. So I pay a lot of attention to K-State football out there. And so I'm like, all right, I see what their games look like. And Deion has, he can make it work. He can make the football team look like one of those teams. And I wouldn't be surprised if they win. I mean, look at how many one-score games CU was in this year. Now, of course, that always is like a flip of a coin. You can either lose those games or you could win those games. So their their record could look a lot worse than it currently does. Or it could also be a lot better than how it ended. So it's definitely something I'm going to be paying attention to. But I think we do bring in somebody else because he's sitting right next to me. And I know he always has opinions when it comes to this kind of stuff. So Richie Carni, hello, my friend. How are you?
Doing great, Rachel. How are you?
Good. So tell me, is it a realistic goal?
It has to be. So yes, it has to be. It has to be a realistic goal because this is why you made that move. They could have hired any coach in the country. They could have hired whatever staff that they wanted, but they went all in. They did something that they've never done before at the CU football program, which is invest at a level that is greater than or equal to the top programs in the country.
Yeah.
They got the big fish in the coaching cycle. A lot of schools wanted Deion Sanders. They wanted him so bad that they don't even know how they're going to pay him yet.
Well,
they're still setting up lemonade stands to figure out how we're going to get that.
Don't worry about that, everyone.
Yeah,
I'll bring the money.
Don't worry about that until it's time to cash that check. Then it's like, it's got to hit the bank account still. So is it super realistic that they could, do I think on paper they are on track to do that right now? No, because as you mentioned, we need to get those recruits in. They need to bolster that offensive line. And frankly, they're going to have to navigate what even the skill positions look like with all these players that are transferring in and out and leaving the program and all of that. So it's not super realistic right now, but it has to be the goal. Because if not, what are you waiting for? What else are you doing?
Okay, well, and I agree with that. But let's go from a fan's perspective. Mm-hmm. You have your head coach who's out there who's like, we're going to do this, right? And you're like, all right, get all excited about the season. But looking at it, is there any chance they could be one of the top 12 Look at how many teams are in college football. A top 12 team.
Oh, I think we're going to find out.
We're talking about the Colorado Buffaloes.
Yeah. Well, listen, Rach,
They're 4-8.
the Colorado Buffaloes 2 years ago won one game, and nobody was talking about them.
Oh, congratulations. We won 3 more?
Now, yes, because if we're being honest, again, like you said, if we're going to be honest, nobody thought that they would be where they even were, despite the fact that it's less than we thought, because they sucked us all in with that 3-0 start, and then things kind of fell back to earth. And I think that that's fair. I mean, I think we all justifiably got some unfair expectations from what to expect for this team, because nobody expected them to go out and beat the national runner-up in week 1, albeit TCU kind of fell off after that, and
there's a little asterisk there.
And they beat Nebraska, who ended up being a bowl team, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And Matt Rule has a lot of respect in the college football community as a head coach. And the Rocky Mountain Showdown was one of the most viewed games in college football all year.
So fun.
So we never could have expected that. This past season, even though in my mind and in a lot of people's minds, it probably felt like a little bit of a disappointment because they started so hot and finished so cold.
Yeah.
They won 4 times as many games. And I know it's like, oh, they only started with 1. But this is a stepping stone and a track that they can build on. So how big of a step do they need to take this year? A pretty big one to be in that conversation. But you've got the decimation of the Pac-12. They're now going to be in the Big 12. It's going to be a whole new landscape of competition. And with this realignment, I think everything's up for grabs.
See, realistically, next year for the Buffs, I'm looking at, I think that this team is a bowl team. Like, that's my realistic next
Agreed.
jump. To make the college football playoffs, even though it's extended with 12 teams, I'm like, okay, but let's get to the bowl game. Like, let's win the conference.
That's got to be the floor. I agree with you.
100%. Now, my question is, too, did Deion end up being a better coach than you thought? Because I remember when he got hired, I was sitting there and I'm like, this can either go one way. He's going to be a complete joke, or he's actually going to be a really good, dang good coach. But I was leaning more towards like, this is going to be a joke. Like, CU is going to still be irrelevant. It's not going to matter at all. And I am totally on the page of Deion proved me wrong. Like, he's a dang good coach. And I'm talking, I know he had his fair share of mistakes.
Yeah.
I know he had those mistakes, and he, wasn't always making the best play calls, etc., make best decisions when it came to timeouts, all of those things. I understand that. But for how much he made the city of Boulder and the men in that locker room believe, you have to give him credit.
Absolutely, you have to give him credit. To answer your original question, I'm going to say no. I don't think he ended up being a better coach than I thought, because I do think that a lot of the especially late in the season, that Stanford game, with whether it's clock management, timeout decisions, the play calling aspect of things that he had a hand in, even if he's not directly coordinating things, I do think it exposed a lot of flaws with his coaching prowess and things of that nature. And I always thought from the beginning that he was coming to Boulder to be the CEO of the Colorado Buffaloes and be the forward-facing aspect of their brand, and he was going to bring in qualified people to run both of those things. But I do think that he made a mistake with the way he handled the Sean Lewis situation. Yeah. And Sean Lewis is gone now. And that is going to be something that's going to have a huge impact on the Colorado Buffaloes next year. Defensively, I think they lacked in a lot of areas, but they just made up for it a lot of times because they were scoring so much more than they were used to. So I don't think he was drastically worse as a head coach than I thought he'd be, but I don't think that he was better as a head coach, because I expected the degree of popularity and hype and prowess. And if anything, I think he exceeded that, but I think that's separate from him as a coach, if that makes sense.
It's definitely an interesting conversation. Let's go to some of the in the headlines that we've definitely got going on, because if you watched Monday Night Football last night, oh boy, poor Trevor Lawrence, man. First of all, this is the year of quarterbacks getting hurt. It hurts me watching them go down.
Are we up to like 54 now? 54 starting quarterbacks?
Yes, which is crazy. Yeah. It's insane, the amount of injuries that we've seen this year in the quarterback position. And I know you and I were talking about this last week. Was it 2 weeks ago? Last week, whenever the heck we were at the Broncos game. And we were like, it was only like 6 less last year.
Yeah. If even that, it was so much. I think it was 53 last year, if I remember correctly. And that was 53 over the course of the entire season. And we had hit 53 in like week 11 or whatever that game was of this season a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
So we've got a month plus still left in the season, and we just saw it happen with Trevor Lawrence going down and having CJ Beathard come in, that number is going to continue to grow. So we're just expanding the record at this point.
I know. And poor Trevor Lawrence, I sprained my ankle in June. And you guys, I was always kind of one of those people where I was like, oh, you sprain your ankle, like get some shots in that thing, like move on. No, it's so painful to sprain your ankle. And I will always be like, I am so sorry, because you really do just have to suck it up. But there's nothing you can do either. You have to let it heal.
I had a pretty significant knee injury when I was in college. I tore my ACL, MCL, meniscus.
And here I am complaining about my sprained ankle.
Yeah, no, but that's sprained ankle. That's crazy, Rachel. No, I'm just kidding.
That was so sad.
But like, I get to a point, and usually it doesn't happen as often with quarterbacks as I feel like it does with running backs, wide receivers, or skill position players.
Yeah.
But every time when I'm watching the NFL, the Broncos, whatever it is, even college football, and I see guys take hits low below the waist, and it like contorts their body, or they get crunched along the sideline or come down awkwardly, like I get a tingling feeling in my leg. And when I was watching that game last night and Trevor Lawrence got rolled up on like that and went down, I like did one of these, like, you know what I mean? And then when Trey Hendrickson or whatever, and his teammate helped him up, and then he fell back down right away, that is like the ultimate
took the helmet,
telltale sign for me, because like when I tore my knee, I got up, like you said, like, I just like, that hurt, rub some dirt on it, whatever. And I stood up and put weight on that leg again and immediately fell on my face. And I knew that something was wrong then. And so I felt like I knew what Trevor Lawrence was feeling and thinking in that moment. And it's brutal.
Well, and here's the thing. Trevor Lawrence has to play. Because if he doesn't, that team is going downhill fast. Their playoff chances gone.
Look at what they have in front of them. I mean, they were playing for the number 1 seed in the AFC essentially last night.
I know.
And I mean, they could still get it because you never know how it goes. But man, this is not a team, I think, that is built to like be what the Vikings were when Kirk Cousins went down and they traded for Josh Dobbs and they're kind of keeping it rolling, or what the Browns are trying to do now that Deshaun Watson is out. You know, they need Trevor Lawrence. He is the engine that makes that go. And I think, frankly, the Bengals are in the same boat, and that's what makes Jake Browning's performance last night even more impressive.
100%. And it was a better game than I thought it was going to be for a Monday night game. When you were kind of looking at it, I was like, oh, the Jags should just kind of roll over the Bengals, 100%, whatever.
100%.
Much better game. Now, you mentioned like the engine that keeps this train rolling. That's Jokic. And of course, he's the player of the month for the month of November, the Kia player of the month. You guys, Jokic is unbelievable. I say this every single day. We are so lucky we get to see him. I don't know if it's still the stat, but I know obviously yesterday before the NBA games, he was leading in points, assists, and rebounds. It's absolutely
close enough. Even if it's not technically exact, it's close enough.
100%. Is that literally unreal to think about?
It's unrealistic to think that a single player can do that, because no matter what position you put them at on the court, 1 through 5, there's always that position is always going to be more susceptible to 1 or maybe 2 of those 3 categories. So the fact that Nikola Jokic as a center is able to lead the league in assists, you say rebounds, okay, he's the biggest guy on the court, whatever. Points, a lot of teams, that have the quality big man will try to feed him.
Yep.
But to do all 3 simultaneously, it's almost unfair. And
it's unfair.
It is, because like what are you supposed to do as an opposing team? Who's the guy for the Pacers? Tyrese Halliburton.
Oh, yep.
He just had a triple-double with 0 turnovers, and he's like the 3rd youngest to ever do it, or whatever. You know who the 2nd youngest was? Jokic. You know what else? He's done it twice in the last 6 days. In the last 6 days, he's done it twice. It's like every time Jokic is the ultimate one-upper. Yeah. And I can see how that who hates a one-upper more than like these guys that are so skilled. It's like every time a basketball player does something great, it's like, Jokic did that 5 times and he did it younger than you and better than you, scored more, rebounded more, whatever it is. It's like everything you can do, he can do better.
But here's the thing. He may be a one-upper, but it doesn't matter because he doesn't care. He doesn't care,
and that's
about that stat
worse.
line.
It's like
he
feels like he's doing
off.
it sarcastically in your face.
And he truthfully just does not care.
Yeah. And I think that that's true, but I also don't want to make it sound like Jokic doesn't have a fire and a passion for basketball and doing what he's doing, because I think he does, but it just manifests itself so differently when I say and you say, and I agree with you that like he does it and like he doesn't care. I don't think he cares about the praise and the accolades, and he does it so nonchalantly and what comes across as effortlessly, even though it's not without effort,
Yeah.
that it's got to be mind-boggling for other people to watch. And he wasn't getting the credit he's been doing this for years.
Yeah.
And he wasn't getting a lot of the credit for doing it, but he's become back-to-back MVP. I think he's going to win it again this year. Should have won it last year. We should have been talking about him as a potential four-peat. Forget putting him with Hakeem the Dream and Larry Bird as three-time MVPs. We should be talking about him as a potential four-timer because he's going into 4 straight years of being the unquestioned, in my mind and a lot of people's minds, greatest player on the planet.
Now, here's the thing, and I said this yesterday on the show. You guys enjoy Jokic while he is here because he's not going to be here very long. If they would win another title this year, I don't know if he would return. Like, he may finish out his contract here, but he doesn't have to finish out his contract. Like, he wants to come here and win championships. So when I say absolutely 100% enjoy the time while he's here, I truthfully mean that because it's not going to be very long. All right, moving on. We'll go back to the Buffs real quick when it comes. Pat Shurmur most likely to be the offensive coordinator for the Colorado Buffaloes next season. How are we feeling about that, Richie?
I feel horrible about that. Are you kidding me? Like, has Pat Shurmur genuinely had sustained success as an offensive play caller, coordinator, head coach at any level?
No.
In football?
The answer is no.
The fact that this guy has cemented himself so firmly in the old boys club revolving door that just keeps getting him job. You want to hire him as a consultant or whatever?
Sure.
Fine, whatever. But he is so bad.
Yep.
I mean, I don't care. He could go on and win a Super Bowl, a college football playoff national championship from here on out forever. For me, he is Mr. Practicing incompletions and saying into a microphone as the offensive coordinator of an NFL team, sometimes there's not much scoring in the first half of games. I cannot believe that from where we were a year ago today, talking about bringing in Sean Lewis, who was a head coach in college football and gave that up to be a part of Coach Prime's program. And was it perfect? No. But do I think that Sean Lewis was kind of put between a rock and a hard place and forced to change and adapt what he would normally do to fit Deion and the Shedeur show and all that? I absolutely believe that. They never ran the ball enough at CU. He always ran the ball at Kent State. So to think that we went from that to now we're talking about trying to get excited for Pat frickin' Shurmur, give me a break.
Let me just read this stat line. Colorado went from scoring 227 points through 6.5 games, or about 35 points per 60 minutes, to 20 points a game in the final 4 contests. Dang. Think about that.
Dang.
That's a big, big jump right there in points when you had Shedeur. Now, of course, Shedeur obviously got more and more hurt throughout the season. Like,
he was banged
lots
up.
of other things played into it, but that stat line right there is kind of just showing when essentially they benched Sean Lewis, which we all kind of watched because he was out there. Which game was he out there for? Like walking around while the team was inside for the right before they walked out. I don't remember. It was one of the final home games whenever they benched him. And I just remember everybody freaking out and was just like, all right, like, what does this mean? Is it going to be Pat Shurmur?
Look
sure
at
enough,
smug visor walking around in that photo. I can't do it. I cannot get excited about now. If they go out and are scoring 40 points a game and whatever, then I'll keep my mouth shut more about it.
Yep.
But I'm still not going to be fully convinced it's because of him.
I love
just
this
can't
comment. Barf on Shurmur.
Thank you. Thank you.
Broncos country never forgets. Now, you know what? I'm thrilled about the fact that my Colorado State Rams are number 13, you guys. It's the highest ranking ever for my Rams basketball team. I am thrilled about it, and it is so well deserved. I'm honestly
good.
They look so
They
good.
look
Their
good.
win over Washington was impressive. Isaiah Stevens gets back-to-back Mountain West Player of the Week. Here's the thing. In that game against Washington, he didn't play a whole lot because he had 3 early fouls. And yet here he is still coming in as Player of the Week. This team is solid. Nico Medved is doing really, really good things up there. And I'm so proud to be a Ram in this moment.
Listen, I don't things ended with their football program on kind of a sour note.
It's a basketball school.
But listen, they have in my mind all the early makings of a March team, of a tournament team.
I'm putting this on record right now. Give me a one shot real quick. If the Colorado State Rams do not make March Madness, I'm going to be freaking pissed off.
I thought you were going to put something on the line, Rachel.
Oh my God. What do you want me to put on the line? I will. I'll put something on the line. What do you think?
I don't know. This is a rare enough opportunity that I'm not just going to blurt out anything, the first thing that comes to my mind, but I'm going to hit you back on this. We're going to come up with something.
Put something in the
by
comments.
the end of the week that Rachel is going to have to put on the line if they're not with it. And frankly, I think it's a safe bet for her because they've got star players that are playing well. They work together as a cohesive unit. They've got a head coach that understands the strengths and weaknesses of their team, and it's all clicking.
And it's 100% clicking. The other thing that's really impressed me is even when they're down, you can see the game plan working in all of those players' heads. Like you see, okay, this is our game plan. We're not trying to necessarily. This always sounds stupid when you say it. We're not trying to beat the other team. We're trying to play our game plan in order to produce a win.
They remind me a lot of, for whatever reason, and I have a personal attachment to this because they broke my team's heart last year. But early on, just from a vibe standpoint, I'm not even trying to match up player for player or scheme for scheme. From a vibe standpoint, they remind me a lot of Kansas State from last year. And Kansas State made a deep run.
Yeah.
But it just they didn't have lottery picks coming out, but they were just this cohesive group of guys. They had clutch shooters, and they understood who they were, what they were, and how they were going to accomplish game to game to game. And I feel like CSU has the bones to be that same kind of team.
For sure. All right. I feel bad because I didn't show this video yesterday, but it was honestly so good. I thought that this was going to be a different type of reaction video, but in fact, it was a disappointing reaction video. Check out the video from inside my house as we watch the Denver Broncos lose on Sunday.
Dude,
Wilson in trouble, avoids it, rifles, intercepted, Jimmy Ward in the end zone, game over. Houston wins it.
First of all, the best part about that's my dog.
I just was going to say that.
She got called up. She was like, yes, I can get up there now.
Yes, Mia immediately just being like, oh, you rang. Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, here we go. All right, it is also Tuesday, so we do have a trivia question. So if you can answer this in the comments, let me know. I'll answer it at the end of the show. The Broncos are playing 3 straight road games for the 18th time ever.
Wow.
Denver hasn't gone 2-1 since blank. Can anybody give me that answer? Let me know in the comments. Again, I will give the answer at the end of the show. I promise you this. Richie, what's your takeaway on the Broncos right now? Because obviously we were all riding hot during the win streak. You lose to Houston. And honestly, they could have pulled it out. Like, that was what's crazy.
I thought they were going to,
It was like a flip of a coin. Like, if you look back on just certain little plays, they could have won.
Yeah, 100%. You gave the ball over. You turned the ball over 3 times if you're Russell Wilson. One of those balls was tipped on his first interception, so that's a tough situation. But the other 2 were just badly placed balls or forced throws.
Yep.
So Russ has got to be better. But we said, hey, the Broncos are not going to be good enough to keep up offensively if the defense isn't performing at the insane turnover rate that they have been. Well, you know what? They didn't force the same amount of turnovers. They struggled a little bit. Nico Collins made Davante Adams look, silly compared to what he was torching up the defense. But even if the defense doesn't force any turnovers or plays exactly the way that they did, if Russ just doesn't throw 3 interceptions, they win that game.
Yep.
So you can win if the defense doesn't force turnovers. They could have.
Yep.
The offense just can't turn the ball over that many times. And it was kind of like a play here, a play there. But I'll be honest, Rachel, I really thought they were going to pull it out. When they were inside there and inside the 5-yard line with 20 seconds left, I know they took their time kind of getting there. And in hindsight, people were like, oh, whatever.
Yep.
But in that moment, I was like, this is why you brought Sean Payton here. He is going to scheme up a play that is going to work. And this is the moment, one of the moments of why you did it. And they fell short. And I know that there's tape of Jerry Jeudy being wide open and this and that, including on that final drive. It looked like he kind of broke in there. But my take on the Broncos overall is that I'm not incredibly discouraged. I told you before the season, I only picked him to win 7 games, and I was going to be happy with that.
Yeah.
And you blasted me for it, and justifiably so if you felt like they were going to be more. But I still think they can get to 7 for sure. And I think that based on the way it shakes out, now you've kind of made a lot more games must win in order to get there. I think they have a shot at 9 games. Yeah. I think they can go on a little run here. They just won 5 in a row. What's stopping them from going 4-1? I know Will Peterson kind of alluded to that in one of his recent pieces that came out for the website. Yep. But I feel like things are just starting to to click over the course of this win streak. And the Broncos need something to build on. And I think they finally have it. How long is it going to take to get there? What's it going to look like this year? And what's the bar for next year? Kind of the similar conversation with CU. I'm not discouraged. And I can't believe I'm saying it because I've been nothing but discouraged, if not disgusted, by this team for years.
No, it's so true. And honestly, I'm kind
healing a little bit.
I'm in that exact same boat right now where it's like everybody got mad at me because of my take on Russell Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, Russ had a bad game.
He did.
I 100% agree. But here's the thing. If you just keep a smaller playbook and you pay him next year, this team can still win 9 games. I don't know what the schedule is obviously going to look like next year, but you're right. They should win 9 games this year. With the people they have for the rest of the schedule, Detroit's going to be the hardest matchup that they have. And I still am like, that could be a coin flip. You don't know which team is going to show up. And that's frustrating for fans, right? You want some team that you're going to see every single week be like, all right, go out there, a 49ers team. But think about it. Even the 49ers kind of have dropped in and out.
Yeah.
And it's been a roller coaster for them too. So I'm just kind of on this, like, the season's not over.
It's not.
It was a really crappy loss to the Texans.
Yeah.
And here's my other thing too. And I kind of wish I would have made this like the title of the show. Did the Broncos make the right pick? The right coaching hire. Now, of course, everyone's like, no, D'Amico Ryans was going to go to Houston. Like, that's where he wanted to go. He had the family ties and everything of that nature. But money at the end of the day does pay. So if they wanted him, they probably could have got him at some point. I don't know what that dollar amount would have been. And to be honest, I still think I look at Sean Payton and I say the Denver Broncos made the right decision by bringing him in.
I absolutely agree. I think it would have been a lot to put on a rookie head coach in D'Amico Ryans. You've got Russell Wilson. He's got this big pending contract looming that you're going to have to pay him an absurd amount of money because of this extension and all of that and all these missing pieces. And to go through the crucible of what the Broncos went through starting 1-5, I don't know that the Broncos are able to spark a 5-game win streak with D'Amico Ryans. I think they needed a Sean Payton. They needed a leader in the room, somebody who's been there before. I mean, I remember telling you during the losing streak, like Sean Payton's teams have started 1-4, 2-4 multiple times. He was with the Saints and they finished with a winning record, and all that. Like they needed somebody to be able to look at them and say, I've been here before. I know what to do. Believe in me. And it's not that D'Amico Ryans couldn't say that, but as a rookie head coach, he wouldn't have the backdraw to pull from that would be as authentic. And so I absolutely think they made the right head coaching hire. I think Sean Payton has started in a meaningful way to fix Russell Wilson's game and to find something that works. And I don't know that anybody else in that coaching cycle could have done it better.
No, and I agree. And I think they have the perfect storm down there in Houston with what CJ Stroud has kind of proven to be.
He's amazing.
He has done phenomenal stuff. And you never want to like say something too early, but like legitimately he could be like the next Patrick Mahomes where you just look at him and you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. I don't like, I think we do this too much with guys coming out of college and even rookie guys. Like
for sure.
When Caleb Williams is coming out of college, they're like, oh, in the NFL, he profiles as a Patrick Mahomes. It's like, okay, can we not every Drake May that comes out of college isn't Joe Burrow.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And we make these comparisons and I've heard people compare him to Patrick Mahomes, CJ Stroud to Patrick Mahomes because he's putting up and like, I think that's presumptuous, but the bottom line is statistically, he's putting himself in a position to have that conversation, merited or fair or not. And I gave Russell Wilson a lot of credit last year, but even though he was bad, his play was bad, he was off or whatever, he's tough. Russell Wilson is tough. He concussed himself late in the season in a lost season, diving forward to get extra yards near a goal line or whatever. And CJ Stroud looked exactly like that. And that dude was getting blasted and he was standing in every play, making throws. And to have that kind of poise from a 12, year or whatever, 10 plus year NFL vet like Russell Wilson is one thing, but for him to be in his like 12th game ever and he's doing
like,
that,
let's go.
It's special, man. There's an argument to be made already. He might be the greatest Ohio State quarterback to play in the NFL ever. And he hasn't even played a whole season.
Wow, that's a big say right there.
It's not a great list.
Yeah, true. All right, last part. The Avs taking on the Ducks tonight down there at Ball Arena. You will be headed down there.
Yes.
You are obviously always, and we will have a recap from you tomorrow. But how you feeling? They obviously struggled on the road, but they come back home for a 5-game home stretch.
They need it. They need a 5-game home stretch here. And yeah, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's when they get away from, and I've actually heard this comment from Cale Makar and Cogliano and other guys. I do think there's an element to this team that when they go out on the road, especially for prolonged periods of time, I think they lose their game a little bit. I think they're more comfortable in their own building, and I think it just makes it easier for them for whatever reason to play their style of hockey. So I think they need this. I think they need to recenter because they've had some tough losses. I mean, you go up 3-1 in the first period and you lose 4-3. They obviously gave away a handful of games ago, that game to Nashville where you give up the game-winning goal with like 30-something seconds left and you battled them tough the whole game.
Yep.
This team is more mortal and vulnerable than obviously the team they were 2 years ago, and they shared some of that to last year. But this is still a really good hockey team.
It is.
And when these guys are playing at their best, and their top six are playing their game and dominating, they're getting reinforcements from the second line, scoring with some of the additions that they've made there, and their checking line is strong. Which I actually think their third line has been one of my favorite things to watch all year. I just feel like they're really fun to watch and they play good hockey. When they're at their best, they can beat anybody. They just need to, within themselves, figure out how to be their best at a more sustainable pace. And I think a homestand here will do some good in that.
Listen, it's a long season, but it's always fun to watch the Avs. Have fun at the game tonight. We'll look forward to your recap.
Can't wait.
Last thing on our trivia question. The Broncos are playing 3 straight road games for the 18th time ever. Denver hasn't gone 2-1 since 1967. I saw somebody say 1960 in the comments. You were the closest guest, but there you go.
Not even
Tuesday
close.
Trivia, you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Of course, Richie, loved having you in studio, my friend.
Love it.
Such
This is fun. Feeling on a little couch, kicking our feet
right?
up.
Kick those feet up, everybody. Have a wonderful Tuesday. Get back to work, and we'll see you tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. Bye, everybody.